Being an amazing product marketing leader doesn't happen by chance. It happens by habit. Product marketing certified leadership has been built on the back of decades worth of experience from some of the world's best known brands with one goal in mind: helping you be the best leader you can be. Crammed with real life case studies, over 12 hours worth of content, templates, exams, and more, this course is everything you need to lead with authority, confidence, influence, and innovation. Every piece of material within the 7 modules and 29 chapters has been vetted, tested, and approved by senior level product marketers from companies like Amazon, Uber, and HubSpot, serving up game-changing insights throughout. By the time you've wrapped up the final module, you'll be able to define what it takes to be a great product marketing leader, build and scale your team, understand how to successfully manage your existing team, use methods for leveraging data, know how to become the voice of the customer, understand how teams work cross-functionally, and improve your strategic thinking. The beauty of the course is you'll have the freedom to work your way through the modules at a pace to suit you. It's 100% self-paced. You'll even get lifetime access to the curriculum, paving the way for refresher sessions forevermore. Visit productmarketingalliance.com to get leadership certified and spearhead your journey to the top.
Hi everyone, thanks for having me today at the Developer Marketing Summit organized by our beloved PMA. In today's talk, I will be speaking about Mission Possible, and that's the science behind people gathering from developers, and specifically on such products as APIs and SDKs. But before we start, I would like to ask you, what do you think developers have in common with Japanese people? I personally love Japan. I've been there 2 years ago, and it was my first time there, and I really loved it. This was for me a magical place and an eye-opening trip, and I pretty much have the same feeling towards developers, because I simply cannot code, and I'm always fascinated by these people who actually are able to create amazing stuff. So here's the 3 similarities that I found. Apart from the language that they speak and I don't understand, both developers and Japanese are extraordinarily creative and intelligent. The Japanese cartoons and technology are always fascinating and very different from European or American culture. And same with developers. Sometimes they come up with incredible solutions that allows us to enjoy the world we live in today. Every person knows that hardworking is definitely a common word that classifies a Japanese mindset. And I find developers in the same category. And although the word is not on this slide, but I would also call Japanese and developers as perfectionists. I'm sure that there are many more similarities, but the last one that I would like to highlight is that developers and Japanese people are both community-driven. Unlike America or Europe, where group work is often disliked because sharing the workload with other students inevitably means that it gets divided unequally. Japanese students thrive over it. They prefer not to have to voice their opinions alone, but would rather share ideas with their peers and make a group decision. And a lot of times it feels the same among developers. They take a lot from the communities and they also feel the need to give back. In fact, Scrum and Agile principles are also based on collective decision-making. To cut story short, everybody loves them, but truly understanding these 2 audiences is for some reason always been a challenge, especially for those who come from business practice. And if you ever read the book of The Shoe Dog from founders of Nike or Steve Jobs' biography, where both these entrepreneurs described their trip to Japan and how they had to make the deal, it was definitely a challenge and a lot of miscommunications. And I sometimes feel the same when I'm trying to market products to developers. In any case, today we're not going to solve the mystery of Japanese people, but as for developers, at least we can try. How is a developer different from an average human being? First, developers love simplicity. They deal enough with complex algorithms in daily jobs, and they love solving problems. But in normal life, they want everything to be as easy as possible. Now, if you look at average human, our brains are also wired for simplicity, thanks to research done by Daniel Kahneman, author of Thinking Fast, Thinking Slow. The second characteristic of developers is having a sense of purpose or knowing that whatever they do has an impact. I remember when I was working for a startup, we were building software in edtech industry, and we wanted to help overcome the shortage of teachers with technology. And during lunchtime, my developers would share how recruiters from really big companies, for example, banks, would approach them and try to offer them triple salaries. But nothing would buy them to switch because they didn't see for what purpose. And the topic of purpose living really picked up already 7 years ago, and still quite hot topic for many of us, not just developers. The next on my list is that developers really don't like spamming. I don't need to tell you that most of the developers have ad blockers. I think you know it pretty well by yourself. But they also ignore cold marketing and cold sales emails and ignore almost everything that's not relevant to them. And if you look at us people, we also get pretty annoyed. So that's definitely not something that we're different from them. And last one is that developers like to test things before they buy. And the same happens to us. If we buy shoes, we first try them or return them if they were shipped to our house and they didn't meet our expectations. So the question to you, are developers that different from us? My answer is no. We are all human after all. So how can we use that information in feedback gathering from developers? My name is Anna Borbotko, and I'm a product marketing expert at TomTom, the location technology provider. With a background in marketing and business, I have several years of experience developing go-to-market strategies for international high-tech companies and local startups. When it comes to product marketing, I'm very passionate about positioning and messaging. I'm a great believer that communicating about your products and services is best when your grandma understands it. And the latest project that I'm working on right now at TomTom is feedback gathering in B2D and B2B environment, making it scalable and accessible to all relevant stakeholders. So today I will be telling you a story of Mission Possible, and we will cover the situation I acquired at TomTom, the challenge that I faced, and the solution with some practical tips. But first thing first, I want to give you some context. TomTom has changed over the last years. It transformed from being a personal navigation device company into this giant that now competes with companies like Google and also other tech providers. TomTom has a diverse product portfolio, and you can compare those products. They have different jobs to be done, different use cases, and they fit differently in different markets. So here we talk about APIs, SDKs, and even metadata. What also happens is that we have really slow sales cycle because we now mostly operate in B2B and B2D environment. At the same time, we as PMM team also work on our messaging and positioning and go-to-market strategies, and we really need that input from customers. And we also have on the other side of the table product managers who are constantly asking for feedback and using information to improve the product or even get inspired to build new ones. So both functions constantly require access to somewhat information flow from customers. But like everything in life, there is a challenge. So in many organizations, you have a dedicated customer success team that's constantly working on feedback activities. And if you don't have that, typically a PMM would take over that role. So that's the case at TomTom. We don't have a dedicated customer success team. What we also don't have is a user-facing application because we work in a B2D and B2B environment. So we can't really go behind the scenes, monitor the behavior of our users. All we have is our sales teams, customer support, and a developer portal. Lastly, feedback is just all over the place. You have internal teams constantly containing information. You have external sources like social media, different analytical tools, and I can just go on. And the deal is not that we as TomTom are disorganized and complete mess. And no, but it's just so many channels, in fact, too many of them of different nature. So it really becomes tricky to analyze that, especially when it comes in a text form. I wouldn't dare to say the concrete figure, but I would say if you work for a high-tech company, the majority of your employees are developers. So we decided to check with them what would they advise us to do if we wanted to collect feedback from developers. We also spoke to business teams and product managers to see what their requirements to feedback would be. So we found many insights in having those conversations. But one thing I really would like to highlight, and it's not rocket science, and it would probably fit very well on a home motivational poster, is that asking and searching for feedback is one thing. But if you do ask for it, it implies that you will have to act on it. And of course, it depends on the quality of the feedback and the quantity of it. But generally speaking, this is what happens. Feedback is responsibility. And if nothing happens for a while, people don't see the point of sharing it with you anymore. And this makes feedback gathering activity quite complicated. So we scratched our head and we decided to come up with a 3-step approach to feedback gathering activities at TomTom. First thing you need is a developer experience index, a set of metrics that measured and analyzed regularly. Secondly, you need to establish a conversation with developers through actions. And lastly, you need to build a learning community, and that can be both internal and external or vice versa. Let's start with the step number 1, and that's Developer Experience Index, or DXI. This is something we didn't take from a big consulting report, or we didn't really read any smart books about it. This is purely our TomTom improvisation, and this is something we're still pioneering at the moment. So perhaps we don't have all the insights, whether it really works or not, but yeah, just bear with me. Maybe this is something that already other tech companies do, and it already exists, maybe in a different form, and maybe they even call it differently. But for now, I would just say that we didn't take it from anywhere. It's our own invention. So what you have is 5 stages of a developer journey. A discovery stage that is related to everything your marketing teams do hard work on. And that's the answer to the question, do I want to use this? Do I need this? Will it help me solve my problem? Next stage that a developer will probably go through is the onboarding. And that's, let's say, if he decided that, okay, this will probably work for me. So I want to get started and I want to start trying it. So how do I do that? The third, and I find it quite crucial for developers, and sometimes I would even say it can come both in discovery and onboarding experience, but very crucial element is documentation. And that's the stage where it answers questions like, how do I use APIs? How do I ensure that what I will implement in my product is implemented well? If I struggle, how can I get help? And that's where the support stage plays a big role as well. And lastly, not to be forgotten, is that, that if the developer sticks with your company, you want to measure this loyalty to your brand and products. So just to recap, DXI is just a set of metrics measured regularly, and all the information that you gather in different developer stages are consolidated in one dashboard. The different stages of DXI are based on a set of quantitative metrics such as Net Promoter Score, customer satisfaction score, customer effort score, but all those metrics mean nothing unless they are supported by qualitative information, such as developer comments. And that's where sentiment analysis of those comments comes really handy. You might wonder why doing DXI in the first instance. First of all, it's just effortless for developers. It's just one click on a star rating or a number rating, thumb down or thumb up, plus the text field if they want to do so. It also happens in real time when developers are building their products, so they can react immediately. and you can get more insights on your products. It's also consistent because you collect the same data input all the time, so you can easily compare or pile the data together. And lastly, it's just a pull versus a push approach, because users are not they're not feeling forced to give you feedback. In fact, they are given a channel to share it with us if they feel like it. So they are given a choice. So how do you collect Dxi? Well, you establish different metrics on different pages. For example, on each documentation page on our developer portal, we have a thumb up and thumb down button. So that's a CSAT metric. And we also allow to have a text field. So when people are doing onboarding and they go through documentation, they can immediately tell us if what they search for is there or not. And we have similar system in our emails, welcome emails that we send them out once they registered. So they can also give us a 5-star rating or one of those if their onboarding experience were at par with what they expected. And all this comes nicely in this dashboard that you see on the right. This dashboard has, like, everybody has access to the dashboard. So product managers, product marketing managers, anybody who needs to get access to it can, and they just monitor information that they need to get from there. Now, I know that market has a lot of sophisticated tools when it comes to feedback gathering. We at TomTom didn't really investigate those tools yet. We are planning to at some point, but for now we decided that we want to use the tools that we already have in house, and that's Power BI. That's where our dashboard lives. We use Mopinion to collect the feedback, and we use Salesforce for additional input that we are unable to collect from Opinion. And another source that is not here is, of course, Google Analytics, that we also find handy. Question to you will be, what do you think we achieved so far in 6 months thanks to Dxi? As I said, it's still a pilot project, so and still an MVP. So don't get too hyped up, but there's something definitely worth sharing. So first thing, we of course collected the data, we analyzed it, and we figured that some of our products are not positioned correctly. So that's what we are busy on doing right now. We are trying to fix those positioning issues that we encountered. We also figured that our documentation needs to be simplified. Now, I also know from talking to other experts that documentation is like your website is just a constantly living thing that you will be updating all the time. But yeah, there's always, of course, room for perfection. But we also realized that there are some product issues that we couldn't capture before. And finally, the last 2 years, we spent a lot of time working on onboarding experience for our developers. And we thought we did a pretty good job. But apparently, developers are still struggling. So we are fixing it right now, and hopefully it will be out of our roadmap. You would think that this is already an awesome source of information, but we humans always want more. And the step number 2 to gathering developer insights relies in building a conversation through actions. Well, we noticed that from time to time we have churned users and we have no idea why they leave. And that happened even before we placed Dxi. So we decided it would be good to figure out. And 2 years ago, we tried to have interviews with developers. We tried to issue surveys with free credits and Amazon gift cards, but nothing worked. And we would get very, very little result, if any. So we again approached our internal developers and asked them for help. And as you can guess, back to a drawing board. And we found out that all our previous attempts were lacking single-click answer email, because perception of developers about surveys is that it's something long, boring, and would require a lot of effort from their side. They also said that having mandatory fields in the survey are really demotivating. They also said that time is crucial when approaching developers. If developer joins, he would care much less investing his time in your company unless he knows that his feedback will change something. So they advise to approach developers when they're still building or testing APIs of your company. And finally, developers don't like marketing in general. So marketing generated emails is definitely no go. In fact, they want a developer-to-developer approach and in a more personalized email where you genuinely asking for help. And if we take email as a channel that you want to use to approach developers for feedback, they also said that writing it short way with a humble tone of voice is something that really helps the effort. Now, something that we currently at TomTom don't do, but I know that other companies do it quite well, for example, Microsoft, and I heard that a few times from developers as well, that they actually appreciate when you have your roadmap open to them so that they can see what features are coming and when, and it especially helps them with planning their own roadmap and feature releases. And it's also an opportunity for them to have feature requests and the developer community then can upvote. And you can also help your product managers with prioritization. Now we're at step 3, and I recently read a book written by Developer Media where they interview a few developers each time on their marketing preferences. And the conclusion was that developers can usually get hooked by ads if they're cool, event, or something related to education. And a lot of time that learning happens in the community. So if you're a company that offers APIs, you should start thinking of building your own developer community or using external sources. What I'm going to share now is not new. Stack Overflow, Reddit, GitHub are usual places where developers would go to ask for advice. But there are other communities. For example, TomTom has their own forum and community activities, which we heavily invest our time in. And there are other communities that are more dedicated to a specific coding language. And back to the interviews that we've done with our TomTom developers, most of them confirmed that if you want to engage into conversation with the developer and get their feedback, email is not the best channel. Forums are the best way to go. Now, another area of exploration, sometimes forgotten or underestimated, is students and universities. Although students don't have money, one day there will be ones founding those great startups or working for big corporations. So it's extremely important to think of that community and show them your brand already at that stage, or even earlier, like at the kindergarten. And perhaps students don't have resources, but they can be invaluable if you give them predefined tasks and let them build something with your APIs and ask them about their experience. Or what you can also do is make a deal with a professor and let them go wild with their ideas, which might uncover other markets or potential for your products. This method, of course, has its disadvantages, such as not being your target audience and definitely not going to flesh out all the problems that your target customer might face with the product. But it will definitely help with things like developer flow, making grammar-proof documentation, and smooth onboarding. Last poll of today, did you learn something you can use on your current project or future project? And just to recap, today I equipped you with tools on how to gather feedback from developers in an effortless way and in real time, how to establish continuous dialogue and via which channels, and hopefully this will all lead to delivering experiences from product and marketing perspective that developers love. And if you remember only one thing from today's talk, remember that developers are human and they like and dislike the same things as we all do. Thank you for being here. Enjoy the summit. They're really cool professionals on this event, and I'm looking forward to watching their presentations. And feel free to connect with me via either of these channels if you want to ask questions or just to connect. And as I said, I don't know everything. We're still pioneering this approach. So if you also have suggestions or some ideas, feel free to drop me a note. I will really value that. Always be learning. Thanks a lot, and we stay in touch.